Hello and welcome to Deep In Pact, a proud member of the Doof Network where we dive deep into Wildbow's most nocturnal work 5 years on. Coming up next is Elliot Diebold.
And that was Ruben Morehouse.
Yes, and we are back to talk about Sine Die 14.6.
Yeah. Side note, I think tomorrow, when this episode comes out, Deep Impact is 1 year old. It's been almost exactly a year since we released our first episode.
We're 1 year old, so we're just old enough to be used as Barbatorum bait, so that's fun.
Oh, thank goodness. I actually would not be surprised if he comes back into the story very, very soon, so that might hold up.
Ah, there we go. It's perfect timing. Yes, let's. It's been a fun show, and now we've been doing it for a year. We're officially experts on Pact, so that's good.
Yeah, especially the ending. That's the bit I know the best. Yeah, and obviously, with that in mind, it's about 3 months until we finish as well. So send us any ideas you have for All Packed Up. We've already got some great suggestions, and we're just really keen to get everyone as excited as we are about doing this.
Yes, it's going to be so much fun. Should we talk about the tattoos?
Oh, yeah, I suppose. A still being exactly figured out donation goal is getting Pact-themed tattoos. It's still in early days, but that's something that we are thinking about.
Yeah, so if we raise enough money for charity, we'll have to get our own little spiritual barometers.
I hope mine go better than Blake's.
I hope mine don't become living. That would be, Anyway, let's talk about Sine Die 14.6.
Yeah, good idea.
Which opens with Blake trying to negotiate with Mara, who is basically just reveling in her animosity.
Yeah, I love how it's not that she gives zero fucks or that she gives a whole lot of fucks. This is just sort of all fact to her. Like, she's so sort of confident in where she stands that it's not even like it's an opinion. It's just she has this sort of... She kind of has this very black and white view of the world in a way. Like, she has it figured out. She knows what is and what isn't. And obviously living in this forest has allowed her to kind of live that out so it's correct. Yeah. And it's just this certainty that would come with being so many thousands of years old like this.
Yes, and... you definitely get the kind of feeling that her self-assuredness is also kind of self-fulfilling. Like, the confidence that she displays kind of makes that come to pass in the way that the environment and the spirits in this, Mara domain, respond to that.
No, she's made herself a nice little local maximum of this self-fulfilling cycle.
Yeah.
And yeah, so but like this vibe is so cool. I couldn't get over how it wasn't that she doesn't care or that she does care. It's that care isn't a factor. Which I don't know if I'm explaining it very well, but it's this like subtle difference that just makes the way she operates so much more calm and self-assured. And I mean, she has this one great line, and that's gonna kind of be a recurring theme of this episode is like great lines.
Oh yeah, there's some real good ones in this chapter.
This chapter's chock full of them. But there's one where Blake is like, "I don't want to be your enemy," and she's like, "Yeah, but I want to be yours, and only one of us has to decide to be enemies with the other for it to count." Which is not only like this hilarious line of logic, but it happens right after Blake starts thinking about Rose. And I couldn't help but tie those two things together. He sort of has some thoughts about Rose, and then Mara's like, only one person needs to want to be enemies for you to be enemies. And I was like, I don't like this.
Yeah, it's not a good foreshadowing, especially considering that Rose becomes active again in this chapter.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's this line where Mara says to Blake, Blake bows to her, and Mara says, "Don't bow to me, Atawa T Sim." And so, Googling this word, and this is funny, you did the exact same thing I did, which is immediately copy and paste that into Google. And the only hit on Google is this chapter of Pact. So it's apparently this word is so old that it doesn't even exist on Google, which is fun. I tried to figure out this word, but I couldn't. And then I saw a comment by Bogdanulb in the comments of this chapter saying that they didn't find it in the only dictionary they found, but words starting with Atawa seemed to be related to selling or going, and words ending in Isim or Ichim seemed to mean shadow or falling, so putting that together, It suggests something like falling into the shadows, being sold to the shadows, going to the shadows, or having fallen. So it seems to be an on-point descriptor for Blake.
Yeah, exactly. Like, Bogdanol didn't seem super confident in this interpretation, but like, I think it adds up pretty well. I'm willing to, until proven otherwise, kind of assume it's probably correct. Like, I wonder if Wabo has some sort of like local library he was going to, or like a person, like some sort of resource to help him with this stuff, because it's like that's an impressive level of detail. If he didn't just make up this word, but he's managed to like get at least a semi-genuine word like this that doesn't appear on the internet anywhere else.
Yeah, it's I guess we'll never know unless Wildbo comments in the Discord or something, but it seems to be an original word that is formed in a fairly coherent way, which is nice. Speaking of words, Mara's words really tangibly change the environment and the atmosphere of this scene. Like, as at the start of the scene, Mara is, basically dishing out apathy, and the trees respond to it. Everything becomes more constricting. Even her accent comes in and out depending on the words that she uses, more than is normal. Like, it's a really interesting way of the tone of this feeling very oppressive.
Yeah, well, I love how this sort of the way the chapter kind of opens with this stuff immediately throws us back into what the previous chapter spent so much effort establishing, which is this place is hers. I'd even argue like this is her. I feel like the forest is an extension of Mara in a way.
Yeah.
I don't know how much that distinction matters, but like, yeah, the point is her will is so tangibly felt in this place, physically and emotionally. Like it's really terrifying.
Yeah, definitely. And the other thing is, Mara she's really doesn't care about playing by the rules or playing fair. Like the great example is she refuses to give out enough information to people to let them easily contact her, because of course she doesn't want to deal with that. But then also she'll abuse the fact that they didn't contact her before they came here, so she has, a claim that they've broken convention, which is such a abuse of the rule set. I love it.
I love this logic where she's like, no, you have to tell me before you come. And they're like, we have no way of contacting you. And she's like, then don't come.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's a perfect little logical trap.
Yeah, exactly. She's built this great system where basically no one can come and see her, and they're at her mercy if they do decide to come. This chapter really emphasizes to me how fucking lucky Mags got in Signature. It could have gone a lot worse for her.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised it didn't go worse for her based on how terribly this goes for the team.
Yeah. I guess Mara didn't hate Mags as much as these guys.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know. But yeah, like, I don't know. This just fits into that whole vibe of her just like not being willing to even care or really engage with them on any level.
Yeah.
She's not willing to enter the conversation kind of at all. She is willing to tell them her opinion, but not really take any information in the other way.
Yeah, definitely. She also reveals that she's over 24,000 years old, so that's fun. Just a fun little note on exactly how old she could be.
I love this because we knew that she was hundreds of years old, maybe even thousands. Like, we've had hints that she's older than just a couple of 100 years. And now it turns out it's actually tens of thousands, which is like awesome. Really gives her even more of a sense of gravitas. Like, you see this sort of start to affect the characters as they realize it, and you're sort of like, wow, like she's very entrenched here.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if we've met anything in the story this old, except maybe Barbatorum.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know. Like,
I don't think is this old. This feels too old for
Yeah, like Barbatorum is the only thing that I think could even maybe come close, and I don't even know if I buy that. So Mara is pretty ancient.
Maybe Orneus, the demon that Blake almost summoned in the fight with the fairy.
Well, I mean, I think. Well, yeah, didn't he put stars in the universe? Like, he's got to be pretty fucking ancient. Faisal actually, I think was meant to be pretty ancient.
True.
So yeah, There's some around, but Mara Mara's the most human, so it makes her the most scariest.
Yeah.
There's also she manages to fit in a great line about how she saw the land as one of like she isn't just super old. She was actually like one of the first people to ever set foot
Yep.
here. And
Yep.
so she saw what the world was like before humans came and like saw
Yeah.
how others evolved to start to emulate human intelligence, which is just really interesting. Like so many characters in this story have talked about theories on sort of how others sprout up and all that. And I like this bit that Mara seems to start to seed, which is more of this idea that humans are really impacting others, like they and we
Yeah.
sort of have been since we evolved.
Yeah.
Like the increase in our intelligence led to this increase in intelligence in others as well. Yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting. It also kind of seeds the idea that others are tied to culture in a way that is stronger than I think we thought. Like, it almost sounds like, these settlers come over, colonialists come over, and they don't just bring their diseases, but they bring their others as well,
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's not just like I would have thought if that was happening, it's just because those are others that are native to England that like the colonists brought over with them to the Americas, and it's like that's partially true, but also those others are of that culture. They may not necessarily be like Gaelic others. It's specifically like modern European English others.
Yes, exactly.
And I mean, I guess I want to keep tracking this. I just love all these sorts of ideas on how others are a manifestation of what humans have put out into the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I could even see something like gods being big spirits. Like if there was a sort of big spirit of I don't know, wind in an area, and then humans came and started to worship the wind. That might have given the god intelligence and turned it into a god. Like it may have gone from just a powerful but dumb spirit to an intelligent god, thanks to the humans.
Yeah, totally. I can see that happening.
Yeah. Actually, while we're here, I just want to talk about like what Mara, I think, or what we're starting to do with Mara here in the story. Peter kind of spoils where I was going with this later in the chapter, so thanks, Peter. But let's just talk about it. Like, I think Blake fought the Duchamps, and we talked a lot about how as he was fighting them, he was kind of fighting this ideological standpoint of the current system is the way that we should move forward.
Yeah.
And so I feel like Mara represents people who sort of want to go back to the good old days. And she sort of encapsulates this idea as someone who is sort of stuck. Like she thinks because something is older, it's better. Or if it's more natural, it's better. Like she so encapsulates this idea. She literally hasn't broken from a routine in like thousands of years.
Yeah.
Like she eats the same food every day is something she mentions, which is just like, I mean, it's exactly what Peter says. That sounds boring as shit.
Yeah.
And she's missing out on like what's arguably the biggest part of the human experience, which is like feeling stuff and like the mortality. I mean, this is why others sign up to be familiars, is because they want some of that sweet human mortality stuff. And Mara has lost that.
I love the way Evan puts it, where he just says, "Oh, you must be glad we're here," and it's such a simple way of phrasing, like, "Oh well, wow, you must really want company," and like, yeah,
exactly. So like she represents, I think, this very extreme idea of the viewpoint of we need to go back to the way things like were. And like it's going to be very interesting to see how Blake comes up against this just after sort of metaphorically defeating the idea that the system should stay the same.
Yeah, Mara is the regression.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting. So they're kind of caught in this little word sparring, and Blake scores a pretty solid hit by saying, "Hey, guess what? I've died a few times. NBD. I'm way more willing to die than you are." And this is a good point, if a, I don't know, horrifying one, I guess.
Yeah, his basic thing is like, hey, if I fight you, we might both die, and I mean, I've got way less to lose than you do.
Yeah,
exactly. It's such a shit argument, but it's also kind of good.
Yeah, I'm kind of nervous that he's willing to make this argument. That the chip he's willing to play is, well, you'll die too.
Yeah, it feels like the verbal equivalent of Scrappy Blake that we talked about from last chapter. This is him not literally scrapping. Well, not yet. We'll get to the end of the chapter, but this is the verbal equivalent of him scrapping.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll see how the physical manifestation plays out as well, I guess.
Yeah.
So eventually, Blake kind of asks Mara, "Hey, is there any way you're going to help us?" No. Is there any way we can leave without a confrontation? No. Was there any chance of that? No. So it seems like a showdown is inevitable, and now the situation just turns to stalling for time.
I love this whole bit where Blake asks Mara, "Was there any chance?" Sort of starts because Tiffany sort of does her best to be like, "Hey, Blake, can you not start fights?" And Blake manages to sort of point out that's like, well, it was always going to happen, so me being confrontational didn't really matter, which yeah, I mean, it sucks because he was right, I guess. But it's just poor Tiff. I mean, that's kind of the vibe we get from Tiffany this chapter. She's just like, oh, fucking hell.
Yeah, she's a bit over it, I think, which is fair enough because, this has been this mission couldn't have gone any other way than badly, right? Like it was set up to fail.
That's what we find out here. It's just funny because we've talked a lot about how Blake got the better team than Rose.
Yeah.
And I think what we've been saying there is the more psychopathic and effective team.
Yeah.
And the exception there is kind of Tiff, who's just like this poor, mostly normal girl who's just trying to deal with like Blake, Peter, Roxanne, and Green Eyes, and now Corvidae.
Yeah.
And deal with all their shit.
Yeah, you don't want to be the human on this team.
Exactly. I like how you're not counting Peter and Roxanne as
No,
humans.
I'm not.
They're Thorburns.
They're Thorburns, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, also another thought I had during this whole section as they started talking is Mara even a practitioner in like the modern sense, relatively? Like I thought, wasn't the awakening ritual also the awakening ritual was established by Solomon, like the same Solomon who did the Seal of Solomon. I think the awakening is different, but it's like he started both of those, like kind of bridged the gap between humans and others and started this whole shebang. But like Mara would predate that, and I don't really see her,
opting into it.
Yeah, not without being forced into it, which may have happened. But I don't know. It's just interesting. Like I wouldn't have thought of her as a practitioner in the sense that she did the awakening ritual, more as someone who has just become more other through losing her humanity.
Yes.
And that's how she got practitioner-ish powers. But like, is there any reason she couldn't lie, for example?
Yeah, I don't think for the traditional reason. I think for the fact that it seems that Mara has done a lot to build weight around her, like gravitas, and lying would undermine that by kind of reducing the impact of her words. So I think it's probably not the same way that lying would cause you to be forsworn, but it's functionally the same for Mara.
Yeah, it's kind of closer to where Blake is at, where he's not really a practitioner anymore, but he's finding... he's not just like held to the truth, but he finds that there's power in it.
Yes,
and I think
making definitive statements that people can put weight behind is important.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think Mara has lied at any point that we've seen, and I think it's kind of like, but she maybe just sort of understands that a lot of her power and part of her routine comes from not lying, but she technically could maybe. I don't know. It's probably not worth bringing up. I don't think I'm not expecting her to lie at any point. This is a very technical, mechanical question, I guess.
Yes. We'll see if it comes up, I guess. It doesn't seem to this chapter.
No.
So Mara says that she can be appeased, and she'll even give them the answer to their question, which is, hey, the puppeteer. She can be appeased if, for each person that gets to leave alive, Blake kills another member of the group. And so Blake seems to accept this and turns towards the group, sword at the ready.
I love how part of the offer as well is he gets to go if he's the one who does the killing.
Yeah.
And she says, at no cost. And
yeah,
Blake
so nice.
Blake doesn't question that killing half of his group is no cost. And I mean, like, that's really the thing here is I didn't ever believe that Blake was going to go through with this.
No, me neither.
But the rest of the group clearly did.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Like, so Evan Evan is the one who's like, no, Blake, no. Which, okay, good, we found a line that Evan won't cross. But also, I'm so surprised that Evan just thinks, yeah, he'll probably do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, this is something that Blake does not take the moment to appreciate, which is not a single member of this group at any point seems to question that he's going to do it. The only person we don't really hear anything from is Green Eyes.
Yeah.
Who presumably knows she's safe because, like, you know, she's his
they're
girlfriend
dating,
now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one point where he sort of threatens to kill her, like, alongside Corvidae, and I guess we don't hear from Green Eyes, so I'm kind of hoping she was just, you know, knowing that he was bluffing at that point, because she knows him so well.
Yes.
Otherwise, he's going to be in trouble, and he should be.
He'll be in the doghouse.
Yeah, but, almost nobody in this group questions that Blake is going to go ahead with this, and he doesn't take that for the wake-up call it maybe should be.
Yeah. I actually think, because it's not you have to kill 4 people, right? Because there's Corvidae, the Maenad, and the Satyr. So really all it is will you kill one of your group? And framing it that way, I think it's a lot easier to see why Blake might go for it.
Yeah, that's true. Because, I mean, the Satyr and the Maenad, there's a bit where Blake is like, did they think I thought they were expendable? And I was like, do you not? Like,
yeah,
I
obviously they are.
Yeah, you're right. And, like, you know, especially with Green Eyes having the potential to maybe come back, like, you know, you could see this actually working out.
Yeah.
Well, no, not working out, but not being completely terrible.
I don't know. It's the hyena, right?
Well, he could just, like, kill her with not the hyena.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to kill everything with the hyena. I mean,
yeah,
like,
I guess.
I'm telling that to Blake as much as to you. Like, there are other ways to kill stuff.
I love how Blake uses this as like, well, I'm going to kill Corvidae then, obviously. And it's such a great calling of Mara's kind of bluff.
Yes, yeah.
It's perfect. And when Corvidae's defending himself, there's this interesting moment. I won't read out the full thing, but basically Corvidae uses tone and word that reminds Blake of when he turned on Podrick in the kind of showdown with the Duchamps, and Blake kind of thinks, wait, was he there? Is he now? The quote is, was he teasing me in the same breath he was asking me to justify myself? This is so funny. It's such a good mindfuck because, of course, this is too weird of a coincidence for this not to be what Corvidae is doing, right?
Well, yeah, and because we know from Podrick's interlude that
Corvidae was there. Yes, exactly.
So, yeah, I think we're very much meant to buy into this idea.
Which
I definitely did.
What the fuck is Corvidae up to? Like, it's such a like 6 levels of manipulation tactic.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is why the fairy looked up to him in the Podrick interlude, right? Because he's such a fucker. He just,
Classic.
I think he just enjoys fucking with these guys on top of, like, trying to hurt them. Like, he doesn't just want to hurt them. He wants to, you know, pain them as much as possible. And this is just an extra way he can do that by seeding this idea in Blake.
Yes, which is great. So of course Corvidae is in danger now. So Peter, his best friend, has to try something. And Peter's argument is basically that the Thorburn are such a negative force on the world that Mara should be happy with them and let them live kind of free of charge, just because they will fuck everything up around them.
I mean, it's not the worst argument, to be honest. Like, I feel like people have made similar arguments before in the story. Like, it's there's merit to the argument.
Yeah, it's a bold play. And Tiffany has this funny reaction where Blake is thinking on Peter's argument and thinks, refuge in audacity, refuge in repugnancy, and Tiffany just mutters, I wish I'd gone with Rose's group. Classic. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, like, as we were already sort of talked about a bit, there are a number of great zingers in this chapter. One we just skipped over is there's a bit where Blake first approaches Corvidae, and Corvidae sort of turns to Evan, and he's like, are you just going to watch him do this to me? And Evan just responds, yep. And it's, like, horrifying, because, you know, we've touched a lot on Evan's crumbling sense of murder being wrong. But in this case, I'm kind of all for it, because Corvidae's a piece of shit.
That implies that even Corvidae is surprised at how amoral Evan has become.
Yeah.
So the fight basically breaks out at this point, right? Mara's limitless patience has run out, and she initiates the fight by snapping a twig, which brings in her flock of birds. And they basically block out all the light, and with that, it's on.
Yeah. And I love how this scene is set up. Like it's written so well. It feels very cinematic. Mara doesn't even move, and the forest just comes to life. And this hits us so much more because we've been getting reminded between bits all throughout this chapter and the previous ones of how still everything is because of this time loop. Like even just the fact that there's normal background forest noise is sort of meaning that there's a problem. And now it's like not just background forest noise, but it quickly escalates from there to howling wind, howling swarms of birds. It's like it really sets this awful chaotic tone.
Yeah, it becomes so chaotic so quickly, which I actually really love. Like, I love that chaotic vibe.
Yeah, like the technique that sort of happens where there's no light, but Peter and Roxanne are trying to light the matches, so every 10 to 20 seconds, Blake gets this quick glimpse of the battlefield, and there's always something fantastic that we get out of that. It's great.
It's so good. There's this bit right before the fight breaks out where Tiffany says that these birds aren't actually enhanced by magic, or not to the extent that we think they are. Mara just has a lot of time to train birds to be her attack birds, which is so fucking weird.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still under the impression they're a little bit magicked, but like, yeah, it's you're right. It's that sort of it's both thing that you get with Mara, where she's slightly magically enhancing stuff, but also she's just been able to put the time in.
Yeah, definitely. And there's one other thing that I noticed, which is, and I don't know how intentional this is, but it just kind of has happened that the teams here now are, this foresty spirit crone and a bird man, which is basically Blake, the forest tree guy, and Evan, the bird boy. Like, Mara and Corvidae are kind of the adult version of Blake and Evan, which I find very interesting.
I love this. Like, that's the weirdest parallel, but it works very well. Like, I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, I
don't know. I don't know what to do with it, but I love it.
Well, you kind of talked about Blake took down the Duchamps as the kind of representative of keep the current system, try and improve it, and now Mara is another avenue, which is go back to the good old days. And I think the stronger the parallel between Blake and Mara is, the more that lands, with Blake as the opposition of go back to the good old days, being, fuck the system, make a new one. I think another possible contrast here is Blake is the symbol for, hey, you guys are the adult version of us. Like, I think it's pretty unambiguously clear that Mara and Corvidae are more powerful in every way than Blake and Evan, right?
Yeah.
But the real reason that Blake and Evan have a chance here is because of connections, because of allies, because of them trying to improve the system. And I think that's the juxtaposition that we make here is you guys are more powerful, but we have friends, we have connections, and so we're going to fuck you up.
Yeah, I like that because, and again, like, especially in Mara's case, Mara is very powerful, but she's also trapped. Like, if she wanted to leave this forest, she's completely fucked.
Yes.
And I mean, I think that's a representative of this ideology she stands for, is that, like, she's just as trapped and as stuck as she is powerful, and no, she's not happy because she's just kind of is.
She's
I don't
nothing.
think she has emotions anymore.
Exactly. It's interesting, and I think that's more of what we can take out of this. Is Mara is a perfect example of what's great about the old system, but also what is terrible about it.
Yeah, well, she shows kind of the end goal of a lot of this, like, min-maxing type stuff. She min-maxed this one particular way of doing it, and yes, like, she's very powerful in some ways, but she's also just her life is sort of without meaning now, and she can't go anywhere. She's just, it's such an empty existence in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Although she did find Corvidae. I mean, I think that's the interesting wrinkle in all that stuff I've been saying. Like, because Corvidae's kind of the same. We saw briefly that he's kind of emotionless in his own way as well. And, Mara's lack of humanity, or lack of modern humanity, or whatever we're calling it at the moment, is challenged a few times. And I think her relationship with Corvidae is probably going to be one of the best angles to attack this, because assuming that the ring of hair Corvidae had on his finger symbolizes marriage, which, again, using a ring for marriage seems very Western. I don't know enough about
Mm,
Indigenous Canadians to know if that was a thing there as well. But like, just the
mm.
fact that she's connected to someone like this kind of breaks that pattern, and I think undermines her point a little bit. And I'll be interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. We'll see, I suppose. So in this fight, we see Corvidae is about to stab Green Eye, but Blake warns her. And there's a little scuffle where Blake goes to stab Corvidae with the hyena, but is stopped by Mara, much stronger than she appears. Corvidae then does a little trick on Blake, swapping out the hyena for a doll.
So I think, because it took me until like the third time reading this to process it, I actually think Mara is the one that stops the hyena, and that's sort of why they end up standing next to each other.
Yes, Mara grabs Blake's hand as he's going to stab Corvidae.
Yeah, and sort of blocks it. Nobody attacks her hubby. And I can't believe we're now at the point where I'm sad that we've lost the hyena. I've actually kind of grown attached to this stupid piece of crap sword.
Yes.
And I'm sad that, like, I'm assuming now that it's been Corvidae, it's no longer owned by Blake, in the spiritual sense. So I don't know that he's going to get it back this time, and I don't like that. And I hate that I don't like it.
Yeah. I just want, I guess, touch on one more time. I really like this fight and how chaotic it is. Like, it's a really fun vibe to have kind of bits of action that you don't know enough to contextualize until a few paragraphs later when it all kind of quiets down and you see where everything is after the dust settles. I think it makes for a really fun way to experience a fight through the perspective of Blake, and I just love it as a technique.
Yeah, the way we get light every couple of seconds, and so he has to reassess the battlefield and like just charge in a direction. Then like you couldn't quite capture this in film, or at least I can't think of a way that you could.
Yeah, kind of the shaky camera moves is, I guess, the closest you get, but that just becomes, like, uneasy. It makes you uneasy rather than, like, trying to piece things together nicely.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, Mara now has the hyena, and she seems pretty confident that she's basically won this scuffle pretty handily.
And she has.
Yes, and she starts making a bit of a pompous speech to close it out, but suddenly she gets shot, and the camera pans over, and Rose is there with the with shotgun and the Knights of the Basement, which is so great.
Oh, it's fantastic, especially because, like, I think the bit that really just made this for me was how Blake is like, oh, the cavalry, I mean, it's Rose, so that's not great. And her group's bigger than mine, which is, like, totally unfair.
Yeah.
But, like, I suppose it's good we're being saved. Like, it's just, he can't just be happy that Rose has shown up to save him. He has to inject these thoughts of, like, oh, this isn't ideal, but it'll do.
Yeah, she saved us,
Shut
but
up.
also, yeah, it's kind of like he's upset that she is undermining the delicate balance of power between them when she just stopped him from being killed, which definitely would have done more to the balance of power. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm so happy that Shotgun and the Knights are here. Like, I genuinely was cheering. It's so great.
I mean, me too, but also, no, get out. What are they doing here? Get out of here. This place is not the place to be.
Yeah, haven't they had enough lordship squabbles?
I mean, okay, actually, no. Tell us everything about Toronto and what's going on there, and then get out. That's what I want to see happen.
Sure.
Like, I'm wondering if maybe them being here is going to finally be our insight into what's happening in Toronto, and things will be as terrible there as I've been suspecting. Because that would just, I don't know why, but that would just make the whole Jacob's Bell thing feel even more like a shit show, that it's, like, spread to Toronto, like, prematurely, and Toronto is also a mess. It's just the whole region has been destabilized. We were so worried about what's going on in Jacob's Bell, but it turns out, like, half of Ontario is just a shit show right now.
Yeah, Blake is really just fucked up everywhere that he's been.
Yeah, exactly.
So Rose and her gun-toting practitioners in tow mean that Blake is pretty confident now, and they turn to Corvidae to get him out of the running, but before they can shoot him, he pulls out Conquest's hand mirror.
Yeah, and so, like, I know you've got another fantastic zinger, or not a zinger, but a funny line you want to read, but mine comes just before it, so I'm going to jump in and do mine. Which is when Rose is like, did Mara tell you whether she's the puppeteer? And Mara's like, I'm not gonna. And then Blake goes, Corvidae can comment, and he glances to where Corviday's standing, and Corvidae just responds, I can. Allow me to consult my notes. Which is just... Like, he really does feel like a kind of fairy plus plus at times, and this is one of them. Like, this is just such an arsehole thing to say. I love it.
Yeah, he's a real jerk. I love the way this chapter ends, right? Because Rose is there with the guns, and they look towards Corvidae and shoot him, I shouted. But Corvidae was already drawing something from his jacket. A hand mirror bound in paper. Don't shoot him, I shouted. It's a great way to end the chapter. Not just because it's hilarious, but also Conquest's hand mirror being in Corvidae's possession has been set up for a long time.
Well, and like this is... As if this situation wasn't already enough of a clusterfuck, that mirror coming into it just takes it up another few notches.
Yeah.
I can't wait for this next chapter. Like, there are so many pieces in play in this scene right now. Like, this is going to be a clusterfuck, and I can't wait for it.
Yeah, but that brings us to the end of Sine Die 14.6. Except, we want to do a little bonus bit, dive into some history of some stuff. Elliot, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah. We're going to do a bit on the original migration of humans into Canada, because obviously that sort of came up a bit with Mara, and this is a bit of an obsession of mine. I love reading about ancient human migration. In fact, I'm just going to pre-apologize for how long this might end up being.
It's a real wall of text here. You guys can't see this, but it really puts the deep in Pact.
Yeah, this I just love this stuff, and I maybe went a bit far researching it, but I had a lot of fun, and hopefully that will come across in this bit. So, yeah, I mean, so to get started, I just do want to preface this by saying a lot of this early human migration stuff is kind of rough. Like, there's not always huge amounts of scientific evidence for all of it. Like, we get scattered sites and stuff.
Yeah.
It was only 2 years ago that they realized that indigenous Australians had arrived 65,000 years ago, not 50,000. So, it's like even now we're still getting, fairly substantial changes in our understanding of when human populations sort of migrated across the world. But there's sort of two current camps of theories as to when the Americas were reached by humans. The first and kind of the bigger one is the short chronology theory, which is basically probably what most people would be familiar with, which is this idea that around 19,000 years ago, there was the land bridge between Alaska and Russia that was called Beringia. And basically some people settled on that sort of during the Ice Age, and then as the Ice Age started to dwindle, they were able to cut through the glaciers in Alaska and make it to the Americas. But all of that was happening 14 to 19,000 years ago. And that's where most of the evidence of cultures in the Americas that's been found is from that period. So it really adds up. We're almost I'd almost go so far as to say we're basically sure that people were in Beringia, and then when the ice melted, they moved into the Americas. But obviously, that's... In fact, a side note, they're actually in Beringia. Well, most theories now are actually that the people went and settled in Beringia, and they were there for about 10,000 years, and then they went into the Americas.
Yeah.
And so that's they actually genetically sort of separated from Asians and Siberians 10,000 years before they even got to Americas, the Americas, which is a fun little side note. But anyway, obviously, none of this really applies to Mara, because this is all 19,000 years ago tops, and Mara pretty well establishes that she's probably 25,000 years or older.
Yes.
So this is sort of where what they call the pre-LGM, which is the last glacial melt theories, come in, which are all the theories about how people might have reached the Americas before 22,000 years ago. And to be honest, there's not really much here. There's some sites that have fairly conclusive evidence, but they're in very, very northwest, Alaska, to the point where I'd kind of just say it was Beringians who just went a bit far, rather than people properly colonizing the Americas, in any sense of just sort of tipping onto the continent a little bit. So there's actually not really much conclusive evidence these days for people having been in the Americas pre-19,000 years ago. But there is actually a lot of... Well, sorry, not a lot. There's some evidence that comes from genetic studies, which show that some people in some areas of Brazil and some other places have quite Australasian genetic features in their DNA. And so like that, and the Australasian there is sort of a broad term for people, not just like indigenous Australians, but like New Guineans as well. And also the Melanesians who went out to like Fiji and, like all sorts of those Polynesian cultures that are obviously very gifted sailors. And so there's these theories that those cultures might have sailed up the coast of Asia, and then sort of when the Beringa Strait was sort of still cut off from the Americas by the glaciers in Alaska, they might have been able to sail around them, and they could have reached the Americas earlier.
Right.
Just through their nautical skills, basically.
Mm.
But this is sort of tough to say. There's actually probably the more scientifically valid theory at this point is that yes, that happened. There were cultures from that area who sailed up Asia and then across and down to the Americas, but they probably actually most likely did it when the people were also crossing via land as well, just because of the way the ice all went. There's not really a huge amount of evidence for this happening pre 25,000 years ago. But that being said, there also wouldn't be much evidence because if these are mostly coastal people, back then the coasts were like much further down. And so that's all now like, like 20, 30 meters underwater. There's no archaeological sites because these people were like, very nautical and they're on the coast that no longer exists. So there just isn't evidence to support them, but there shouldn't be.
Yeah, well, I guess now that we have some first-hand evidence from Mara, we can actually say definitively that it was pre-LGM, so that's nice.
Yeah, and I mean, okay, so that's the thing. I actually think, like, I think you can sort of make the case that you think people had done that sailing across pre the LGM, and people won't say you're crazy. The thing that gets me, though, is these were very nautical people who sort of stuck to the coast and didn't drift inland that much, although obviously they did eventually. But Mara's from Ontario, so it's kind of like, apparently sort of her parents and her didn't just jump off the boat, but trekked across the entire continent in sort of her lifetime.
Is it confirmed that she and her parents moved across, or could she have done this at a later point, like lived in Ontario for however long and then started trekking over as she became immortal?
I mean, that's possible. I'd have to go back and reread it. The way it was phrased gave me the impression that she sort of settled in Ontario with her parents and has been there ever since.
Yeah.
And that's obviously, like, I don't know. Like, I was just like, I don't know how likely it is, not knowing these cultures, not knowing that anyone can know these cultures, that a small group might just ditch the boats that they traveled on for generations and just sort of trek thousands of miles or hundreds of miles inland. So clearly, and I'm just going to say it right now, I don't think Pact is realistic.
Whoa, let's not go that far. Maybe Mara can lie. That's the explanation. And she chose to lie about not being 9 million days old, being actually, 6 million, 5 million days old.
Yeah, I mean, like, the thing is it's definitely possible. It works very well in the story, so it doesn't at all matter. Like, I had a lot of fun diving into this stuff, and hopefully everyone didn't mind listening to me just lecture everyone on it for about 10 minutes.
I found it fun, so that's what matters.
Okay. Well, that's the end.
Yes, and as that's the end of our history lesson, it's also the end of our episode. Thank you for joining us for this very special, almost anniversary episode. Remember, for the end of the year, we are actually doing a Q&A, so if you want to leave us some questions for us to answer, you can do so in our discussion threads, which will be linked down in the show notes down below.
Yes, you can also leave us any thoughts you have on All Packed Up, stuff you want us to do. Stuff you think would be fun, anything and everything you think would get you excited for All Packed Up. Yeah, that's what we want to hear about.
We want to be a community live stream, a community 24-hour fundraiser. So whatever tortures you'd like to, have us perform on ourselves, leave them in the discussion thread.
Yes. The other way you can reach us is on Twitter at MediaMD Podcast. It's where you find the live reads that obviously out of sync with these episodes now by a fair way. So consult the Doof Media website, doofmedia.com. There's a calendar page on there that'll make it clear exactly where I'm up to relative to the episodes.
Yep, and while you're consulting doofmedia.com, why not take a look at all the other great shows on the Doof Media Network, such as the Doofcast, which actually is about to release an episode that I think we're both featuring on, the roundup of the best movies of 2020. Sorry,
of the
20.
decade.
Yeah, sorry, I got it wrong.
No, we're already locking in the best movies of 2020.
Yeah, we know what it's going to be. It's Wonder Woman 1984.
So no, assuming our bits didn't get cut, which I have very hot takes.
If they did,
it's possible.
Guys, let's revolt.
We'll take it over while Scott and Matt take a Christmas break.
Yeah.
And if you want to support us or Scott and Matt, whoever comes out at the end of this revolt, you can head over to patreon.com/doofmedia and support either empire there.
Yes. Actually, if you want to become a patron of Doof Media, you can go to patreon.com/doofmedia. And now is a great time because while a lot of other places might wind down for Christmas, we're actually ramping up our Patreon-only content for Christmas. We're doing 12 days of incredible articles and content every day for 12 days on the lead up to Christmas, which is insane. And
in fact, when this episode comes out, there's going to be about 4 of those out
about
already.
like 3 or 4 days in. So I've done one. In fact, my second one might also be out by now. I can't remember when my second one comes out, but there's a bunch of cool content on there that is accessible to patrons at the, what is it, $10 and up level? Is that right?
Honestly, I'm not sure exactly where those articles are going.
But if you go to Patreon, you'll find them.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you don't see them on Patreon, just keep increasing your donation dollar by dollar until you do see them.
Well, now what we've got to do is we just won't release them, and we'll see how many people go right up.
All the way up to 300 a month.
We're not going to do that, just in case.
I'm pretty sure they're at the $10 level, but if not, maybe there's something else, I don't know.
Look, if this is all too complicated for you, and you want something simple, head to patreon.com/Wabo. Here's a very simple system. You give him any amount of money, he keeps writing.
Yep.
And then we all win. So patreon.com/Wabo, give him whatever you can afford.
Yes. And thanks. Thanks for being with us for this past year. Thanks for becoming patrons. Thanks for enjoying Pact. Thanks for bringing Pact back to everyone's attention so much that I'm pretty sure this show has had an impact on the decision of Wabo to get back into this space with some of the bonus stuff he's done for Do the Right Thing and stuff like that. So it's been a fun ride, and it shall continue to be for another few months.
Yes, I'm enjoying this story so much, and I can't wait to see it to the end.
Yeah. And I guess we will see you for our next episode, which is Sine Die 14.7, and that will be coming out on Friday the 20th of December. So we'll see you then.
See ya.